welcome. We're going to play a game called Meaning Match. I'm going to say some words and you all have to note down the first thought that comes to your mind. And I will play this game with Jay. Jay, you ready? Let's go.
Yo, way to put me on the spot, man. Okay, sure. Let's go for it.
Okay, so the first word is GUI.
Graphical user interface.
Okay, CLI.
Command line.
Okay, shell.
Hackers.
Interesting. Program.
Execution.
Okay, terminal.
Linux.
And last one, Iron Maiden.
The best band ever.
Good one, man. You performed well. What you demonstrated was basically the common thought process that a lot of computer engineers have. This does not mean that you had any wrong answers. There are no right or wrong answers. Well, except for the question about Iron Maiden.
Yeah, that would have been embarrassing.
Indeed. The idea was just to see what you and in general a lot of engineers associate with these common terms and explain through that how to enhance the understandings of some of these terms and sometimes to even correct some misunderstandings that a lot of people have. Let's begin with the first one. GUI or GUI, like you said, does mean graphical user interface. So no problems there. But what is it? In this course, we've made it a task to ask, what is it, right? For everything. What is it actually? So what is GUI? Well, how are you reviewing this video right now? On a screen, right? But wait, how is it being displayed? What is the program that is running? These are questions an inquisitive engineer should be asking. To put it simply, your browser is the application that is running similar to what we discussed in the basics section. It's basically an application, a program. It takes a part of the RAM or memory, and then the CPU executes it. The application itself runs web applications inside it, which have their own code and logic. And one of those web applications hosts a video which you are playing right now and seeing us. Now, the operating system of your computer is running the browser application and schedules it to run at different times, which is by our standards not noticeable because it is usually in milliseconds of delay. Unless your RAM is full and you're running many applications, which is when you start to notice the lag, right? Especially when you're running CPU intensive applications like games and movies and streaming and things like that. But hold on a second. Did you know that you are seeing on the screen every single thing, including the browser, the desktop screen, and everything else? All of it is also part of a bigger application? Did you know this? This is in fact called the graphical user interface. It is a visual representation of the operating system, but you need to understand that the operating system does not need a visual representation. It does not need a GUI. Only we do. So you and me, we need this, but the operating system does not need this.
Wow, I didn't know that. How so?
This takes us to the second term, basically, CLI, or like you rightly said, the command line interface. This is originally what computers were using. There were no GUIs at that time, just black screens where users entered commands to run programs and do computations, and the CLI was the only way to communicate with the computers at that time. These computers still use the operating system, but just without any GUIs. In fact, many Linux computers today still do not use a GUI. Take some servers, for example, such as the Ubuntu server operating system. It ships without a GUI, even today.
Interesting. So how does CLI work then?
Thanks for that question, Jay. It brings us to the third term, the shell. What is it? Simply put, the shell is a program that takes commands from the keyboard and gives them to the operating system to perform. So when you said hackers come to your mind when I mentioned the shell, you were right to some extent. Hackers, network engineers, system administrators, they all are known to use the shell and the command line interfaces extensively. Why is that, by the way? It is just easier and much quicker to run programs from the shell as compared to GUIs. And these roles require running complex commands and tools all the time, which is more efficient to run from the command line than doing it from a GUI and clicking buttons and opening these things. GUIs do have an added layer of abstraction that needs to be crossed before hitting the operating system, whereas the shell does not have that. It's very close to the operating system. This also answers the term program and execution, which you said in your answer. Programs technically execute either from the shell or the GUI actions. So we can run a program from the shell, or we can do some actions on the GUI using our mouse and keyboard. But at the end of the day, they are just executed by the operating system.
And what exactly is the terminal's role in all this?
Well, as you know, in today's computers, uh, they ship with a GUI in most cases. What happens then to those people who want to use the shell, like programmers, hackers, and all these people? How do they use the shell, right? Well, they have a program called a terminal emulator. So you know what emulators are. They emulate certain programs. You know, we used to have those fun Game Boy emulators back in the day when we wanted to play Game Boy games, Nintendo Game Boy games, and we didn't have any Game Boys, physical Game Boys, so we used to use emulators, right? Similarly, we have terminal emulators. This is a program that opens a window on your screen and lets you interact with the shell. There are a bunch of different terminal emulators we can use. Some are really fancy, make you seem like a hacker. Some are very basic. So some Linux distributions install several emulators. These might include Genome Terminal, Console, Xterm, and there are a bunch of them. Both Windows and Mac also have their own terminal emulators that you can use. Like you have the command prompt in Windows, and I believe the terminal emulator in Mac is just called terminal. So you open them and you basically run commands as if you're interacting directly with the shell. So you are interacting with the shell, you are running programs on the shell, but you're emulating it because even that terminal emulator is running inside the GUI, right? Because today's computers come with GUIs. So we use emulators. Back in the day, just to summarize this, back in the day, we did not have any GUI. So you start up a computer and you get the shell directly. That was not an emulator, that was a shell. But today, you can interact with the shell, but you use an emulator for that because everything today runs on top of the GUI.
Which brings me to my last question. What is your favorite Iron Maiden song?
That's a super hard question, Jay. But you know what? I'm going to recommend a song for our students to get inspired. Check out Wasted Years by Iron Maiden. It's all about the importance of time and appreciating the age you live in, which is the age of computers and technology for us, and the infinite possibilities. Seriously, guys, don't waste time. Make the most of it. Don't stop learning and enjoy your time doing it. Like, for instance, rocking out to good music.